Good morning, Bears. Welcome to a wonderful Tuesday morning. So good to be back with you guys today. It is amazing. It's been a wonderful day or two here. Wonderful weekend. Some of you have kept up with that. So good to see you and to be seen. It might just be the papyrus font. Corey. Now, feel free to tell me how I pronounce that, because I don't recognize how to pronounce that. But welcome. Glad you could join us. Always good to see new faces here. And if you've got a bear name that I probably am not familiar with, always good to share. I try to vet bears that are coming in here, or new folk. Kanga bear, huh? Very cool. It's awesome. I always love getting new bears up in here. And by the way, welcome, Kanga Bear. Allow me to give you the official welcome. And there you go. You are officially, one of us. In group preference, all that good stuff. Bears, it's so good to be with you today. I'm having a great one. Korai. Very nice. I like that. Thank you, Mofo Nature Bear. Appreciate that. Steve, good to see you, brother. Anybody getting circles? Anybody getting circles of death? I might be having a little bit, but my stream looks all good on this end. So I'm assuming no. I do have a little bit of the stutteriness in the video. It's having some rough day. And I'm trying to prevent me having too many circles under my eyes by having a good cup of joe with my Pender's Ugly mug. Grandma Bonnie approved. Well, I don't know if she approved it, but I did bring that over yesterday. Some of you who are following Twitter. Yeah, I had a, fantastic day. Fantastic day yesterday, hanging out with my grandmother. I went over late Sunday night and spent some good time with her, but she needed somebody to be there to kind of help out with a few things. And since she had a bit of a fall about a week or so ago now, and had lacerated her head a little bit. No concussion, so she was fine there, but, she definitely was a little lower in the energy, so needed some help getting things accomplished. And I have to tell you, from minute one that I stepped back into town there in that little small farming town where I used to live, just south of here, about 45 minutes or so, oh, very literally and figuratively, it was a breath of fresh air. It was so amazingly nice. Got there, Sunday evening, and the sun was just setting as I showed up. I was watching that go down in the west over the fields, and the cloud cover was fairly sporadic. But there were some nice, honking huge clouds that were just drifting by, nice and gray by that point. There's something about the winter, or I should say like fall time air as you get into the winter as well. Something that the cold air seems to do to my perception of the environment around me. It feels like the colors are more vivid, and there's a greater amount of colors as well, because you've got the changing leaves and everything, so that's obvious. But something that doesn't seem to be quite as obvious, maybe not as tangible, not as I don't know how you describe it, not as definable. Maybe that's a better word, because obviously none of it's tangible. It's all something you see. The quality there in the vividness of your surroundings is just amazing. Hey, Kodiak, good to see you. Steve Pender's here, Last Movement, Andrew J, Fellow DC. Man, we got a bunch of folks in here. Korai. I like that name. It's cool. I dig it. I thought I saw Roy Bear. I thought I saw Sergeant Peterson and Liberty Snake. Man, we got all kinds of bears. All kinds of bears. Yeah. Let's see here. Mofo Nature Bear, I did call out earlier, of course. Can't not do that. And Kick ya. Can't be that. She's in here. She's listening. She's working on some stuff. So, oh, excuse me. I empathize with you, Kikya. I don't doubt you have a ton of things to get done there. I also have tons of things to still do myself. Who else was up in here? That's all the ones I've seen. Dom Tough was in here way back at the beginning. I know I saw him in Sovereign. David, Analog Bear. You can't miss out these legends. Never miss out calling out the legends. Oh, let's say I said Moomin. Mr. Nicktown? Is Mr. Nicktown up in here? I didn't see. If I missed you, Fellow Disse. Philo Disse. Philo Disse. All right. If I've been pronouncing that wrong, please forgive me. Control Alt Debug. You see nothing, but it's okay. You're watching Vox Day. All right. Control Alt Debug. Welcome, by the way. Would I know you by another name? Control Alt Debug. You look familiar, and yet not familiar. I don't know. I'm gonna forget that. Philo Disse. Philo Disse. Philo Disse. I was always saying fellow Disse. Philo Disse. Oh man, I am Jelly Liberty. You were Jelly. Oh, you're telling Liberty that you're Jelly. I get it. I get it. I was like, what's Jelly Liberty? At any rate, I'm getting so sidetracked by chat because I love to talk with you guys. It's a blast. I just do that the whole time, except it'd probably get a little dull for some. But no, it was pretty incredible to see. Who's going to see the Hodge Twins? Who's going to see the Hodge Twins? Who going to do that? Jelly. I don't know who Jelly is. Who's the Jelly character? Interesting. So, yeah. Oh, Liberty. Okay. Gotcha. I think I'm catching on now a little bit. Thanks for keeping me in the loop. Yeah, that's way cool. Go see them Hodge Twins. Man. You go see that. I have no jokes. I have nothing for Hodge Twin stuff. As cool as those guys are, they're just hilarious. Anyway, I'll do me. I'll let them do them. So, yeah, I'd be jealous too. Heck yeah. Man, we're pumped up for it in November. It's not even November. Gracious. It's so funny. 3.5, 4 months out. Like, going to see Hodge Twins. Yeah. Yeah, I have kids that my kids don't even know all the lingo. So wait a minute, I still didn't get clear on what jelly. Oh, jelly is jealous. Okay, it took me a minute. Gotcha. Yeah, I've heard that. I just don't hear it often enough to keep it in common parlance for myself. It's an uncommon parlance for the big drum bearer. But then, of course, parlance is in common parlance for Big Drum Bear. So let that pretty much tell you the whole story right there. Anybody who's using words like parlance is probably not using words like jelly very regularly. At any rate, let's see here. So it really shouldn't be, Korai. It's not difficult, but I think there's actually a mathematical principle that somebody told me about a long time ago. This idea of a correlation curve happening between the entrance of a particular term into the lexicon that we're generally using on a day-to-day, and then to how quickly it gets abbreviated, right? Like we at one time said brother, and over time that got shortened to bro, or bros. And then now it's bruh, right? At what point is it going to be b? It's just b. Let's say one letter, right? And now it's gone abbreviation ad infinitum. It's a weird abbrev. Yes, that's not my joke, but I do like to say it because it's funny. You can, as long as you claim it's not yours, I think it's okay to share jokes of other people. Give credit where credit's due. So I got to this small town of my origins, where I was hanging out when I was an infant, and where my family has resided since we came across the ocean from Germany, and got to spend some time with Grandma. But yeah, it was just blown away being back in that town, because out there the sky is enormous. When you're tucked in town, when you're out like inside of a semi-populated area, and the terrain is not all that level, your scope of the sky is a lot smaller. It just looks more, I don't know, compacted in. When you go out into a rural community and you look up in the sky, there's a lot less light pollution, so you can see so many stars much more vividly than you would in the city. And B, the landscape of stars, or the skyscape, I guess I should say, of stars, is just so much more vast. It's amazing. I mean, it's not really, it's just your perspective on it has shifted. So yeah, I was pretty taken aback by that. It's pretty amazing. Excuse me. So thought I'd bring something up here. I did intend to pop this one out there. Let's see if I can get it, because if I can, it's going to be pretty awesome. Let's see. Twitter. Gonna bring up the good old Twitter. And I'll tell you what, my reaction to this brought up a conversation between my wife and I. And it was a good conversation. It was a good sharing of thoughts here. Let's see here. We're gonna have to go over to the Twitter feed of someone that I agree with. Yes, of course. It is the one, the only, gay Dave Rubin. Oh, hey, I forgot to turn my ringer off during the show. I kind of want to do that, and I like to not be interrupted while I'm trying to show here. So, yes. Okay, all right, I got to bring this up because this is cracking me up. This is hilarious. So I'm looking at the Twitter here, and of all the people that he's interviewed, I think, unless this isn't who I think it is, let's see here. Sorry there. Nose is a little unpleasant today, but what are you going to do? Let's see. A window capture is what we want, and then I'm going to have to share the Twitter with you. By the way, I'm pretty sure that there's a bear that is on Twitter who is not Field. He's definitely not Field, and I think he's out there somewhere. So if you look up not_Field, you might find, or is it Field_not? I forget. There is an interesting bear out there to follow if you haven't refollowed this guy, because he's, or just followed, because he's clearly never been on Twitter before. All right, so this character over here, isn't that the guy that played Prince John in the Robin Hood Men in Tights? I can't think of his name. Like Richard Brooks. Yeah, that's it, Richard Brooks. Or is that somebody else entirely? Because, like, of all the people that you could have up, why would you have Richard Brooks in your banner? There's a lot of other more interesting people to have in there, but I don't know. There was a particular tweet I just saw. Okay, I think it's this one. So it's like, this is legitimately crazy. The fight is whittling down to more and more to the fight for free speech. All the markers have been there for years. Many of you have seen it coming. Imagine what progressives will try to enforce with the authority of the state behind them. And then Howard Dean popping out there in an article, Gab should be tried as accomplice to murder in the synagogue slang. It's like, wait a minute, what? What? And I'm not shocked by it. It's not like you actually said that. Like, of course they actually said something like that. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm not shocked. And I'm a little disturbed that I'm not shocked. Like, it's really there. Neti Pot would be a good idea, Sovereign. I do have one, but I think I broke it. But I'm going to have to do ablutions or something later. It's just been pretty heavy today. Yesterday wasn't bad. But yeah, so that was of interest to me. I saw that, and I reacted immediately like, are you crapping me? I just like yelled it when I was looking at that. My wife was in the shower, and as soon as I said that, she asked if she could talk with me. She's like, can I share something with you? And she had to say, just promise that you'll just let me say it all out before you interject, and let me get to the end. Because she did need to say that, because I probably would interject and go back and forth. I often don't follow that principle from Proverbs 10. Is it Proverbs 10? It's somewhere in Proverbs. It's he who answers a matter before he hears it's a folly and a shame to him. I often don't follow that principle. So, though I advocate it, and I try to want to do that more often. That was Mel Brooks? He was in a Mel Brooks film. He was because the Robin Hood Men in Tights was Mel Brooks. But no, I think he's Richard Brooks. I think he's related to Mel. Could be wrong. At any rate, let me think here. Trying to remember. Okay, so where was I? So she was telling me about this thing she did in college. And it was a report she did when she was doing her degree in broadcast journalism. And I think it was a report on, how people react to violent imagery in news, and it was looking at comparing people who watch one source or have one source of media or entertainment or whatever it be in their minds, and then another that was more like CNN or something like that. I could remember. And this was, of course, back in the 90s, early 90s. When she was doing this, but the tendency was that it could affect people's brain chemistry and lend them toward believing that people in the world were likely more violent, that there was more of that type of thing going on, that they'd be more likely to believe that there's more negativity going on in the world, and that it was important for them to balance those kinds of things out, with positivity at the same time. It's like if they just predominantly ingested one type of media source, they were going to, or media type, they were going to have a much more, she is a good wife, much more, how would I say it, pessimistic view of what's going on around them. And I immediately agreed, because I am not gay Dave Rubin. No, that's not why. I immediately agreed, because she's correct. That I think that is certainly the case. You can get, hey, beautiful lady. People who watch hey, thanks for correcting me on that, dear. People who watch a small amount of news about violence versus people who spend a lot of time watching that. Yeah. Like small versus large. Thank you for setting that straight. Hi, beautiful lady. Yeah, I'm talking about us. And it's useful because it's on a bigger point. So you once again, my beautiful lady inspires shows. She does a great job of that. I liked that she brought that up. I really appreciated that, because it was adding to that point that if we focus too heavily on the negative kinds of things, and I was getting like, I was getting pretty intense about, I think earlier I showed her a video of, what was it now? People that were, I retweeted this too. People that were coming in the caravan, that were grabbing onto one of the gates at the border and yanking the fence line down, like masses of people. They were just destroying the fences. And, she is my better half, and don't forget that, Steve Pender. There's just this violent expression from some of the caravanners, it would seem. And again, I think this was put out by a Mexican TV outlet. I don't know all the details behind it. I just know what I saw in the post. So I'm reacting, to some of that. But that even didn't make me react as much. I just showed it to her, and I was like, well, yeah, that's going on, it was just of interest to me. I don't figure you will, Steve. That's why I hang around people. See, dear, this is why I need to hang around people like this more often, because look, they're reminding me that you're my better half. You always want to encourage that, right? She's out walking dogs this morning and doing important God's work. That's what I call that, God's work. Because it would take someone with the patience of God to deal with dogs all day long. That's not me. Let's see here. So, yeah, what she had suggested there was a very worthwhile point. We do need to take time to balance out a lot of the insane negativity that we're going to see with positivity just as much. And I make it a point to want to share with you guys, like I did this weekend. I took that little canoe ride, and I was talking about, push yourself, move forward in stuff. Don't settle for, excuse me, don't settle for, well, I can only do this or whatever it be. Know your limitations, but the only way you know your limitations is by testing yourself regularly in different ways. And I always say, how do you grow? Engage your mind, engage your body, engage your heart, and seek to serve the ultimate purpose when you're doing that, right? It's my summation of what Jesus had to say to the gentleman that came up to him and asked him, Master, what are the what is the greatest commandment? And he said to him, love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And that guy couldn't argue with him. Guy was like, you spoke well. Obviously that's the case. So it strikes me to sort of state that in a slightly different way, but it's saying the same thing. And it's also calling you to specific action as well, right? You have to engage all those things. Even if you don't, see eye to eye with me on the biblical stuff, that's fine. The principles stands. Like, I'd love to see an argument that would suggest that none of those things are of use, right? Granted, we may not agree that there's an ultimate purpose. That's fine. If you're more deterministic, if you're more of a Scott Adams-y kind of guy and you think this is a simulation reality, then, that's fine. You can have that perspective. But even Scott Adams pushes himself to try and do better. He says, yeah, I might think that I'm determined in all my behavior, and yet I still have to act like I'm not. Is how he said that. I was watching the Ben Shapiro interview with Tim from the Sunday deal. Excuse me. And that's how he put that. It's like, even though I think I'm determined, I'm supposed to act like I'm not. And that's actually coming off of, if I'm understanding his sourcing on that right, a Stephen Hawking speech that was given, I believe, at Cambridge several decades ago, where he talked about free will versus determinism in terms of this universe. And his conclusion was, of course, that we are all determined. All of our actions are basically predetermined in some way. But because we don't know, because we can't see the future, then we may as well not be determined. Because we can't know what's to happen, we might as well not consider ourselves to be determined. But we are determined. Like it's fate. It's fate versus free will. You're just stuck. But because you don't know any better, you may as well consider yourself free will, right? And I've heard a recounting of that from people who were there. I think there's an apologist guy named Ravi Zacharias who has talked about being at that lecture. And he said there was like an audible groan from the audience at hearing that, like this little escape at the end. What is the ultimate purpose? And I leave that in each person's experience to determine that, to discover that, because, I will tell you about what I believe the ultimate purpose to be. Hey, Andrew Bergen. Andrew Bergen's up in here. By the way, guys, if you don't know about it, go subscribe to Andrew Bergen. By the way, I need to give you a wrench, Andy. If I can call you Andy. That's not too insulting, brother. He has a great podcast. Excuse me. Pardon me. coughing over here. Go check out Andrew Bergen's channel and get into his podcast. I'm going to say the name of it wrong because I was just listening to some of it the other day. But yeah, tell everybody if you want, Andrew, the name of your podcast, because I'm going to say it wrong. You prefer not to be called Andy. I will refrain, and not in the musical sense. I won't repeat it. Yeah, tell me the name of that. I'm trying to say it, but it's on the tip of my tongue. It slipped my mind. See how I was building that up. You thought I didn't know. That was my clever way of getting that out there. Thought it was funnier. So, yeah, definitely subscribe to that because it's pretty darn cool. But, yeah, glad to have you here. Always glad to have bears up in here. It's good stuff. So, let's see here. It slipped my mind. Where was I at? It slipped. Changed my mind. That's funny. Oh, man. Absolutely. Yeah, glad to have you. Glad to have you, Andrew. It's interesting to get opportunities to be out and about and have some time to decompress, just to get away from the insanity of what we're doing day to day. And remember that we're like this in comparison to the rest of the universe. And at the same time, each one of us has the potential to affect masses of folks, for good or bad, right? We have the power of life and death with our words. We have the ability to massively impact people. And I mean, just look at what's going on. I think I've seen a few of you mention things in the chat already today. Look what's going on in Britain. Look at people singing a song written by Owen Benjamin of America, right? Dude on a podcast creates a song with the help of bears, right? Other people that had a hand in that being the case. And that's an anthem for freedom for a guy who was unjustly in prison. It's just amazing to me. It's amazing. We're infinitesimal in the scope of what we know of our existence, and yet we can have a massive impact. So it seems incumbent upon us to make it a good one. And in order to do that, we have to be able to discern. We have to discriminate between what is a bad one and what is a good one. And we might have disagreements on what that is. But I think it's also serving that purpose in a sense to contend for whatever that might be, to discern that. I had a conversation last night with my fast friend, my deeply growing brother, Brett. Brett is an amazing musician and mixing engineer, mastering engineer. Unreal vocals that this guy is capable of. And his wife as well, Rebecca. Those two are an indomitable team. They're amazing as a couple. They're amazing as parents, and they're very, very, very passionate about the scripture. They're passionate about making music together. It's just really, really, really cool to see. And so the three of us had a cool conversation for a while. It was pretty interesting, some of the ground we covered, but we were wrestling with different things together. We were working through, trying to better understand different things about this ultimate purpose and how we live it out. And that was incredibly encouraging, you know, to see. And we thought about this for a little bit, that so often we see this lack of willingness to dig into the finer details of things, because it's the nature of people to want to simplify their experience, to reduce it into a compartmentalized box where they understand it. This is what we tend to do in our society, within, and not just America, but I'm thinking like the modern world, more like Greco-Roman, westernized, Hellenized process of thought, the way that we conceptualize the world. We tend to want to put things into, I'm off screen here, we want to put things into boxes, neatly organized little conceptual boxes, and organize them that way. And so if it doesn't fit in the box, then it's not that thing. You know what I mean? And we separate these different concepts by these little boxes. And yet, what we discover if we're honestly pursuing truth, is that a lot of these different concepts have overlap, that they don't necessarily neatly fit into these conceptual boxes all the time. Sometimes they do, but there's aspects of these different things that definitely overlap. And I think artists are definitely sensitive to this. The analytical mind would much more want to do that compartmentalization. And I think even a lot of artists tend to have more of an analytical mind sometimes, where they still want to do that largely, but they're open to this idea of the fact that a lot of these things have connection, and that connection is useful because that allows us to illuminate something relevant, something that ends up being very practical to people through our art form. I mean, that's what comedy does all the time. It reveals something to you, a connection between things that you didn't see before, and it's funny. That revelation of that hits you with in a way that your response is, that's hilarious. Like, how did I not catch that before? How have I never seen that? And that revelation of that connection, like, what I think Owen talked about something similar to this recently. You see all this raging, all this division that is going on within the media. You see things that want to break us apart, make us more fractured and fragmented. And then you have a comedian come up and get you to laugh and see connection between different things that you hadn't noticed before. And you realize all that stuff that makes us divided, a lot of the negative stuff that makes us divided is really a bunch of hooey. You know, I don't know how I ended up going to hooey, but that's what that came up in my mind. It's a bunch of malarkey and garbage. You know, it's not the case. You know, are there distinctions? Are there things that need to be clear and separate? Absolutely. And I think we need to be very aware of what those real compartmentalizations ought to be. But for each concept that we have in our minds, our thinking box ought to be allowed to be a lot bigger, right? We ought to be able to work within our thinking boxes in a much broader way to understand a concept, because if not, we run the risk of missing out on how certain things are connected that really are. And those threads that weave things together remind us that we don't say, think, or do anything in this world without it having a ripple effect. We just don't. Everything that we think, say, and do matters a ton. And so it really ought to be good, what we think, say, and do. It ought to bear positive outcome. You know, the after effects of that, how it impacts others, how it impacts us. We ought to do our best to make sure that what we're doing has an outcome that's desirable for us. Now, that might mean that the immediate outcome might be not so good for some and good for others, but the long term, we want it to be good. You know, Dawn and I were reading 2 Kings today, and we got into chapters 19 and 20 of 2 Kings. And something that was interesting there, I talked about this on my canoe ride, how the Assyrian king had sent his general out. I think I'd said it was the king, but it was actually the general that went out and said, we're going to destroy you. We're going to mess you up, Israel. That's what's going to happen. Like, duh. Look at Assyria, like, conquering all these other nations. It's going to happen. All their gods didn't stop it. Why would you think yours would? And so Hezekiah, who was the king at that time, he prayed passionately, and he sought out counsel from Isaiah the prophet on what was to come, what was to happen. And they prayed passionately that this would be dealt with. And the word was, you're not gonna be waylaid. This guy is completely sticking his nose in the face of the Almighty, or he thinks he is. You know, his perception of who he is and what he's doing is way off the map. And it's going to be corrected. It's going to be corrected largely by just the natural consequences of his own actions. But it's going to be corrected. And sure enough, this 185,000 troop army of the Assyrians overnight, one night, when they're thinking about besieging Israel, right? Everybody dead, right? Except this general. This general's out there, and he comes out and finds his army, 185,000 troops, in the middle of the night. Just done. Just corpses everywhere. Like, what? Yeah, done. That's got to be an intense thing to see. Like, imagine that you're a military commander and you've got 185,000 troops, and then suddenly you come out there and they're all done. Just all of them. Not like a majority or anything like that. Not like some sort of plague just took over and everybody's dying. But no, everybody done. Period. That's a wild image. And still, that didn't totally deter this guy. You know, he gets out of there and he goes back home, right? And he goes to his God's temple and is praying to his God about something. And then his kids come in and off him and just take him out in there so they can take his place, right? I'm sorry. I think it was the king that came and saw this, not the general. It was the king. And the king's kids see this and they kill this dude, and the king's kids become in power there, right? So it was of interest to me. It's like this guy was raging and screaming and didn't realize what he was messing with. You know, I thought, I'm big and bad, and clearly we're just, we're the cream of the crop. DED, that's right. Legionary. That's awesome. That legion, there are many legions were DED, yes. So then I read about this King Hezekiah, and you think, wow, this guy's like dedicated here. I was talking before about how he was the first king out of like generations who finally said, hey, we're going to do the things the way we were told to do them that are like actually good. We're not going to have this like, we're not going to tolerate anymore this burn your kids in fire worship thing going on. That's going to go away. That's done. We're not permitting that around here anymore. And you see this guy getting along in life, and he's getting to a point where he's really ill. Something's happening, and he's probably going to be done. But he's praying and hoping that he comes through this. Please let me live. Let me make it. And he doesn't. Or excuse me, no, that's not right. I meant to say he doesn't. No, I'm totally saying that wrong. That's not the word I meant to use. He doesn't die. That's what I was trying to say. He doesn't pass. He's sustained for another 15 years, longer than he thought would happen. He's healed of his infirmities, but he makes it another 15. And then down the line, he's given this mercy to continue on, beyond the path. He's healed of his diseases. He moves on and continues to be the ruler in this Israel for longer to rule in a just way. But then he's bringing in like people that were enemies to Israel, these Babylonians, and just showing them like all his riches, all his wealth, all his treasures and stuff. Like, look at me, look at how all this cool stuff that I've got, and showing it off. Look at how wonderful and powerful we are. Like, that's going to tell people, that's going to give them the impression of your strength, right? That's going to tell them why you're awesome and why they shouldn't mess with you. And not this creator that saved you through everything that you recognized before, that you pleaded with before to save your life. And now that's not where you're putting your focus at all. You've completely abandoned that. That's not where you took these people. You took them to show them all your stuff and show them, like, look how cool I am. So the prophet Isaiah comes back and it's like, here's the deal. This is what's to come, right? You're going to be fine for the rest of your rule. You'll make it the rest of this 15 years that you've got left. But the Babylonians are going to end up taking over. And your kids, your own kids, are going to be hauled away to serve them as eunuchs, right? Ah, that's going to be a bad day. And he's like, it's not going to be me. That's basically what he says. Well, hey, it's not going to be my lifetime. Oh, I'm cool. He doesn't have any compassion. He doesn't have any willingness to go back and do the same stuff that he was doing before, because now it's not going to directly affect him. So his heart was kind of evidenced through all that. And I found that to be very, very interesting. It's so important to have leadership that's humble, right? That recognizes your own depravity. And you can't stop on that path. You can't just do that for a time. And then when you've arrived where you think you've arrived, you can't quit there, because that's like the most crucial time to stay in that area of humility, right? You have more power and influence at that point. You absolutely need it, because everything you think, say, and do has impact on the future generations. And so what happens is he has this kid named Manasseh who ends up becoming king. And that king sees the attitudes of his dad and looks at that and says, well, I'm going to rule how I want. I'm going to rule and do things my way. And it ends up going way downhill. His rulership was not humble in the least. It was not devoted to the creator that they were serving. It wasn't that kind of rule that he had at the beginning, that Hezekiah had at the beginning of his rule. And he runs the kingdom, this is Manasseh now, runs the kingdom into the ground to the point where they're besieged by the Babylonians. And I think 13 years worth of siege, and they finally break in there under leadership of Nebuchadnezzar. And they're having a bad time. Wasn't Nebuchadnezzar was the general? I think he was at first, and then he eventually became ruler. I have to reread that. But it's not that, God goes, well, you were bad. I'm snapping my fingers. Boom. I'm just making it horrible for you. It's that the consequences of your behavior are going to have impact that you can't see, but I can. And I'm telling you now, this is what your lack of attention to your actions is going to lead to. It's going to lead to ruin of an entire nation. Something as simple as just being so arrogant that you're like, I'm going to show you all my great wonders and treasures and things that I've accumulated over the years so that you have a high opinion of me, right? Even just being an arrogant jerk can lead you to ruin, right? And not you personally, but those after you. So your character will continually be tested. It is continually being tested. You're getting tests, right? But are you testing yourself as well, right? Because if you're not testing yourself to prepare you for the tests that are constantly going to be given to you through life, you might not be ready for those tests that life is going to throw at you. You might think you're sitting pretty and doing all right. So the need for that personal accountability just got hit home even more through reading that, and reinforced even more heavily. The point that my wife brought up today was hit home through all of this too. We have to all the more balance what we put into ourselves, because the output is going to affect what we think, say, and do. And that has an effect on everybody around us. Like the threads are interlocked everywhere. I've been drawn for years to music that has themes that are interconnected. Themes that are interconnected. Like this, I've talked about him before. Neil Morse is this artist that I've been a huge fan of for years. Such good music. And he'll do concept albums a lot where he'll start with like an overture at the beginning that hints at themes that you'll hear throughout the album in different songs. And then you'll hear these songs, and every now and then there'll be a little remembrance of a theme that you heard back in the overture, or it's a theme from one of the other songs that you'll hear later. Then you'll hear this other song later, and it'll echo that theme that you heard at different points in the album. You'll keep getting that. And in the end, you'll hear some of these different themes overlapping, not just music, not just like in the instrumentation, but the lyrics end up overlapping and interlocking together in a way that you didn't think was possible. But it was all interconnected from the get-go. And now, like, they've been separate. You've seen them in their separate existences here. You've listened to these songs all by themselves, and then you hear this unifying of all of that, like the way it was designed to be, and it's just like, yes, that's awesome. I love it. I can't wait until my buddy Brett and I get further along with some of his music, because it does some of that same stuff, and I'm just so excited about it. I'm so over the top about that, because I get to make music with him on this. I get to be part of a project like that, and it's super, super cool. So what I love about that is that it reminds me where, like in the area that's one of the most impacting to me, music, that we are, everything that we do is interconnected, interlocked, right? And so every little thing you think, say, and do matters, right? All of it matters. So don't be too flippant with your thoughts and words, and especially your actions, your deeds. Don't freak out, like, don't be like, I can't take a step because I might make a misstep. Like, of course you're going to make a misstep, right? That's going to happen. But if your heart is in the place to want to serve that ultimate purpose, to want to discover what that is, to seek that out every day, the likelihood is that even the missteps are going to work together for good toward the end. Because if that's not there, if your heart is not focused on seeking that in the first place, then you're probably going to have a much harder time having those missteps balance out, I would imagine. Andrew Bergen is practicing trumpet right now. Well, that's interesting, because, let's see, I'm looking. Hang on. Got something here. Where'd I put it? Oh, I put it right here. I don't do it well. I do it once in a while for pretend. You can see how slowly those keys rise up. It needs valve oil badly. But this is like a 50-year-old Olds Ambassador that was in my parents' basement when I was a kid, when we moved into this place across the river from here when I was about 10. And it was like 30 years old back then. Now it's, that was a good 30-something years ago, so it's probably like almost 60. I'm getting accompaniment from my dog. One of these days, Andrew, we might need some more trumpeters that actually know how to play trumpet, unlike myself. Ambassadors of the iconic beginner horn. Yeah, for sure. And this one is, you can see it's like massively rusted and tarnished and things in different places, but we did have it like, and it dings and bangs all over the place. It's rough. In fact, the spit valve down here is broken, and so I've covered it with some sort of gauze or whatever to keep it from, when it wasn't covered, I couldn't get any pitch out of the notes. It just wouldn't sound properly. So yeah, still functions to some small degree. Yeah, I don't do that well. I keep it around to play with and try things with, but Gita, is that you or is that Chunk? Which one of you is making noise? Or is it both of you? Are you both making noise up there? By the way, on sale now at bonfire.com. It's over here. Love Chunk, or you're a commie. Get your t-shirts. And that's the first generation t-shirts. There'll be a newer one that I'm going to see if I can work out to be a lower price. I want to try to get them down, but still they're $21.99. I can't lower the price on that campaign yet because it didn't hit 50. I might just scrap the campaign altogether, but we'll definitely see. There's going to be some new Chunk products coming out and new other Big Drum Bear stickers and other things like that. That'll be hitting the description for links, etc., hitting Twitter, hitting all those mediums, Instagram. So I named this episode Silver Lining because I wanted to talk about a different issue. It's somewhat similar. I may rename this one altogether and not end up calling this one Silver Lining when I rename it in post, because I've talked so much about what you think, say, and do matters, because that was pretty important. But I did want to talk about getting to go down and spend time with my grandmother because an interesting thing happened on Sunday before I went down that made me think about why it's important to look for the positivity in situations where we're pretty discontent. Oh, all right. Hang on one moment. I think we want some dogs, right? Well, the dogs want to be over here, that's for sure. Did you want to come say hi? Is that what you wanted? You guys usually do. We're going to get all three, huh? All right. There's dogs galore that wanted to visit. So, come here, Chunk. Come here, buddy. I think people want to say hi to Chunk. Come here, bud. Come say hi. Up. Pop up. Come on, up. You got to climb up. Is that difficult? No, wait. Here you go. There's the beast. He says, I might have a shirt you could buy. It's a good shirt. I wore it one time, and it was red, and it was on the trunk. Oh, yeah, I'm very tired. I need some sleep. I love my dad. You gotta buy the Chunk shirt because I gotta have my food. I gotta have treats. And maybe I'll be on the show more. Maybe Dad will give me my own mic and I'll come in and sing duets with him. Oh, I love you, Dad. I love you, Dad. Okay, I'm done. Put me down. Poor guy. He's got this neck rash thing that's going on. It's almost finished, I think. It's really starting to heal up. A lot of it has, but it smells. You know, while it's healing, it smells. So he's a stinky puppy. But he's a good dog. Right, buddy? Yeah, he's a good boy. So there's your Chunk fix. You gonna go rest with your sisters? They like it when they can be downstairs close to Dad while he's streaming. Good dogs. Yeah, they missed me while I was gone the other day. Yeah, I was thinking about something while my wife and I were at church. And maybe that'll be a subject for tomorrow that we'll dig into a little bit. But thinking about how situations that on their surface look kind of unpleasant and kind of like a drag. Like, man, I'm stuck with this task, and it's not glamorous. It's not pleasurable at all. It's just tough stuff that you know I have to do now. But every time I'm confronted with stuff like that, I'm trying to make myself take a different perspective. I'm trying to make myself look at that and say, okay, I get to do this, right? I need to do such and such because it needs doing. But because I'm needed in this way, I now get this opportunity. right? That I otherwise wouldn't have had. And that's exciting because when we don't think about that, how much are we missing out on? How much stuff happens to us every day because of stuff we've just got to do? Opportunities that are before us that we miss out on because we're not looking for them. I think with all of the, that was kind of leaning toward the beginning what I was talking about. So I guess it does sort of pan in here. In order to maintain that balance between keeping aware of the insanity that's going on around us and the positivity that still goes on in the world. You gotta be careful with your dew claw there, bud. This is the chunkers. Hang on. What are you doing? He's way down on the floor. He sank down as I was lowering the camera. So funny. Such a good dog. We have to intentionally choose to focus on things that are positive around us, and it's not that hard to find them because the positive things are waiting for you there in the midst of things that are seemingly mundane. The amazing, miraculous stuff is waiting for you in the things that are on the surface just benign and innocuous. And I would encourage you to keep your eyes open and look for that, because you're going to need every ounce of positivity and encouragement in the world that I think we're walking toward at times. Things get very, very dark seeming when you've got people yanking gates off of our borders, and we're having to send troops down there and all that jazz. When you've got people actually trying to get public sentiment growing to say that Gab should be, as an entity, as a whatever, the people that are the CEOs of that tried for as accessories to murder. I mean, could that happen? The world court decided that to defame the Prophet Muhammad is unacceptable because it could engender prejudices toward people of Islamic faith. That's happening. And that's madness. Basically, like what the people at Charlie Hebdo did years ago should be illegal because it can cause the reaction that it did. Not putting the blame on the people who actually did what they did. Like, really? It's just amazing. Just unbelievably amazing. That stuff is going on. So for us to endure through things like that and to not allow it to rob us of our joy, right? Because we have joy within us. We have the ability to produce joy, right? We have the ability to well it up. We can choose how we feel. We can be strongly motivated to feel particular ways. That's without a doubt. I mean, some things are so intense that they sort of override our will a little bit, but we have the ability to, and you're right, Kick. Yeah, I agree with you entirely. That was kind of where I was going with that. I just didn't fully speak that through, but you're absolutely right. It's about the ability to speak freely. We have the ability to think freely, right? And that includes our emotions. And there will be strong motivators to direct that in the ways that other people want our emotions to go and our thoughts to go. And in order to continue to stay strong in the face of those who would want to have control over us entirely, like they somehow think that that's the way the world's going to be a better place, which I don't think many of them do. I think most of them just are power hungry, because that's been the history of the world, that people who have even a taste of power that don't have a moral compass to guide them will invariably seek more. And they do that by being able to control people more. So that's just historical. That's just what we know from experience. In order to not be completely bogged down and debilitated emotionally, mentally, and in turn physically. Children, come here. Just a minute, my dogs are wrestling. Children. Oh, Chunk. Chunk. Nope. Okay, they quieted down. I'm thinking of Kyle Kavanaugh. When Kyle does his streams, his kids are usually like running around all throughout the stream. I have dogs running around throughout my streams. Hang on a second, guys. Come here, kids. Let's go, guys. Let's go. Come on. This way. Go. Go chew her legs up there. There you go. You're good dogs. The dogs, everybody. The dogs. All right. So, yeah, I really got an neti pot this today. You got to take every opportunity you can with the way the world often works to focus on the awesomeness that's around you every single day, because it's there, but you just have to look, right? If you go and listen to like great music by Honky Bear, by the way, hey buddy, how you doing? You know, because he put out another great song the other day, and I was digging that. If you go and listen to a good podcast from Andrew Bergen, you know, if you go and get some food for thought from Steve Pinder, right? If you go and help write stories with Field of Bears, right? Or go check out Kyle Kavanaugh rocking some tunes, you know? Encouraging bears. Hang around cool stuff bears do. Laugh with Owen. Laugh with Crowder. These things don't leave us in despair. These things encourage us to keep going forward. And my wife and I sitting together in the morning doing our Bible reading as often as we possibly can. You know? Stuff like that. Stuff like that really gives me motivation. I want to keep having words, thoughts, and deeds that are encouraging to myself and encouraging to others. And we need to have that every step of the way. We need to continue to reciprocally do that to one another, to encourage each other, to build each other up, to edify is a term you often see used in some of the older biblical texts. To edify one another, build each other up. The word edifice, you know, a big tall structure. Something has to be built up or constructed. So to edify one another is that same kind of idea. We got to do it. We got to do it. We've got plenty of reasons to feel torn down. But there's that silver lining out there to be looking for. There's like zero reason to stay that way. And there's so much responsibility we have to not allow ourselves to stay that way. It's not only that there's I think I'm just going to reiterate that. It's not only that we don't have any reason to be staying that way in a despair kind of mindset, but there's a responsibility not to. Somebody was telling me recently, it was that Dennis Prager had made that comment that it's your responsibility to be happy, right? It's your responsibility to choose to be that way because you can and you must. Because the baseline of our existence is it's a JBP thing, you know, but it's not, because it's just true. He just spoke it a lot. Unbearable suffering. And we unbearables are not going to allow each other to continue to suffer every single day. When we experience it, we're going to make each other laugh. We're going to make each other like motivated, right? even when we're just doing like mundane little tasks that we've got to do, little things that we do throughout our day, little tweets that we post, whatever it be, even if it's something negative, how do we put the positive element, the silver lining to that post, right? Like if we like I retweeted that thing about the wall, you know, and I wanted to make it silly a little bit. You know, I wanted to make some just blatant sarcasm because I knew it would probably get a few people to snicker, you know, and giggle a little bit. So now there's some positive endorphins flowing through your body at that. You can look at people yanking on a wall, but you can go, yeah, we don't need a wall. Obviously, that's silly. That's just silly. No, it's not. It's clearly not. And you can recognize a truth by looking at that situation in the video clip that's horrendous and still laugh. Little things like that starts there. How easy is that? How easy is it to pick this up, right? A couple of times a day, put something out there and intentionally think about how can I look at the horrificness that I'm seeing and encourage people positively in the midst of it. Where can I create silver lining? Or at least not create it because it's already there. It's already there. How can I highlight it? How can I first be really adept, really well practiced at identifying it? Then how can I manifest it for other people? They've got to see it, right? If I can be the first one on scene who sees that, great. Then it's my responsibility now to put that out there to build other people up. So not only do I want people to walk away from this stream today like encouraged a little bit, but I want you to walk away with a sense of responsibility to encourage others around you, right? Like that you have a ton of material out there to draw from, but you have to practice training yourself to see it rapidly, like almost instantly. Got to look for that. That's got to be your first instinct, right? Now, there's places and times where you don't want to be just going at somebody and like being all bouncy and happy when they're clearly down and depressed. Sometimes the answer is to be with them and feel the pain that they're feeling in a horrible situation. I had a good brother of mine who told me a horrific thing that last night that a friend of his, one of his close friends, they ended the life of their own parents. And that was like the response I'm having now. That was like stopping in your tracks, like intense. Like, what? And I don't even know any of the people really in that situation, but he does. And so that impacts him pretty deeply. And he's like even one step removed, right? But he's feeling for his friend who's really feeling for their friend that has just brought such destruction into their life and the lives of others and stopped lives of others. It's like, what do you do with that? In the midst of that, I felt compelled to redirect the thinking because I saw the thinking. We want to put it on this track. We want to be on this track of like sorrow and despair. We're like, no, it's like we have to feel that. And somehow like feeling that sorrow and despair is going to make the situation better. It doesn't. Let me explain something to you. Sitting in sorrow and despair doesn't make the situation better. Does feeling emotions and being honest and admitting those emotions, is that a valid thing to do? Of course it is. And we should, Colonel Grossman, David Grossman, that Steve interviewed a while back. Lieutenant Colonel retired David Grossman, amazing guy. If you don't know his work, check it out. On Combat, amazing book. Get it on Audible. Get the version where he's reading it because it's hilarious, right? And it's so good. It's so one of the best like motivators to toughen yourself up and be prepared for what the world throws at you. But he has said this adage a number of times: pain shared is pain divided. When you have a painful situation and you share that, you divide the pain out. It doesn't have the same impact. Joy works the opposite direction. Joy shared is joy multiplied. Pain shared is not pain multiplied. Pain shared is pain broken down and divided. And it doesn't have the same impact. It has to be, pain has to hit you with its full brunt force, right? That's its weakness. So sharing pain divides the pain. Because each person that you give it to has a different way that they're going to be able to react to it. And you're going to have at least one in that bunch who can say, we're going to find that silver lining. You have that much more chance of having somebody who can see the positive in the midst of that pain and highlight it in a way that's meaningful, that's practical and poignant, that really, really helps to bridge the gap between where you're at in the pain and where you're going to be at, right? That's why that's so vital. Joy shared is joy multiplied. And joy has that same effect when you can share it amongst a group. It outweighs pain a million times over, right? When you can get behind that joyful thing, whatever it is, and ride that emotion, when you ride it with a group, it's unstoppable. Unstoppable. We got to have that. We got to embody that. Pain shared is pain divided. Joy shared is joy multiplied. So, as my friend is telling me about this, I am compelled to direct the focus on the fact that this is horrendous. And this is definitely something we don't gloss over. And at the same time, we have a responsibility we cannot forget in the midst of it. It's like, I'm not ignoring, I'm validating that pain. I'm validating that sorrow. But I say, do not give it place to eat you. There is too much to rejoice over. There is too much to rejoice over. We have to acknowledge it as soon as possible, because the more you give the darkness foothold, the more sway you'll believe it has. And it will have. The more you believe it has, the more it will have. But it doesn't really. That's a lie. That's fake. It doesn't actually have sway. All you have to do to defeat it is to acknowledge the things that are joy-worthy right away and recognize that there is a potential for a positive outcome to be had, even in the midst of these horrific circumstances. Even in the midst of that. And I think back to Joseph. Joseph in the book of Genesis. His brothers, all of his brothers, mine is Benjamin, so maybe about 10 of his brothers, really, were not fans of him. They didn't dig him. He was kind of an upstart in some ways. He was a little haughty and a little arrogant, but not realizing it, I suppose. Because his dad really liked him. I mean, the dad was in love with his mom. Like, that's the woman, his dad, Jacob, right? Jacob loved his wife, Leah. I'm sorry, it wasn't Leah. Leah was the older sister, wasn't she? Rachel. He wanted Rachel, but their dad made him marry both Leah and Rachel, because Leah was the older. And he loved Rachel, and Rachel was the mother of Joseph. And so both Joseph and Benjamin were pretty special to him. I thought Rebecca was Isaac's wife. Could be wrong, but I thought, Rebecca was Isaac's wife, the mom of Jacob. Could be wrong about that. I'd have to look. I mess things up plenty. Anyway, correct me if I'm wrong. Search the scriptures to prove whether the things I say are so. Always Acts 17:11. Take that. Always filter what I say through that, please. If it's biblically related. Gee whiz. Get 1-800-PHONICS, 1-800-ABCDEFG, or whatever the fudge that is. Check my phonetic, whatever, enunciations of things through that filter. So this Joseph kid, he's got that chip, and his dad gives him this coat of favor, right? This coat of many colors. Some understandings of how that's should be translated is that this is a piece of seamless cloth, and there's something very special and ornate about this. Whatever the case may be with this coat, it showed he had favor over his brothers. And hey, Moomin, take it easy, brother. They sold him into slavery. They tossed him in a well for 3 days and then thought, well, we're not going to leave him here to die, but we'll toss him into slavery. And he goes into slavery and ends up working for like the Egyptian captain of the guard in Egypt, a guy named Potiphar. He's the most faithful servant that guy has, to the point where he's so responsible. Potiphar trusts him with his whole household, the responsibility of everything there. And then Potiphar's wife, she's digging this chili and says, yeah, how about you and me? And he says, not gonna happen. Why would I do that? Why would I do that? I have the favor of my master. I'm not going to go and betray him. But she screams and pulls Christine Blasey Ford, and he gets out of there, and she grabs his little skirt thing that he's wearing, so that he runs out naked. That doesn't look good, but I'm pretty sure this is an aside, but I'm pretty sure Potiphar knew that this was BS. I'm pretty sure he was aware this was a bunch of junk. Because if he had even thought that the guy really did that, I'm pretty sure that Joseph would be dead. Joseph would have been slaughtered on the spot. I mean, think about any of us. If someone did that to our wife, how would we feel, right? Many of us would be moved to the action of homicide, I would imagine, or we would feel compelled in that way. But instead, he's thrown into prison, right? Again, that was just my conjectural point. I don't know whether that's not doctrinal. That's just an idea. I believe that might be the case. So he's in prison, regardless. And then he ends up being like in charge of all the prisoners because he does such a good job there. And two dudes come to him and they say, well, we've had bad dreams. And one dude, he interprets it and says, well, your dream means this, and you're going to be set free in a few days. The other dude's like, oh, I've got a dream. And, oh, your dream means this, and you're going to be beheaded in 3 days. You're going to have a bad time. But the dude that was freed, he asked him, would you remember me when you speak to Pharaoh, when you're released, to let him know that I've not done anything wrong here. I'm not a bad guy. Speak on my behalf. The dude doesn't say anything for years until Pharaoh's having a bad dream, right? And then he remembers it. But all through this time, Joseph is not in despair, right? I'm sure he had days. I'm sure he had dark days. But he manages to continually be in a position where he's the most reliable guy. And he's a foreigner, right? It's not even his culture, but he's the most reliable dude on scene. He's a leader, even in his position of slavery and prisonership. He's still a leader. He's still standing up and taking charge where he can and doing a fantastic job. Do we have that? Do we have that kind of spirit? I'd say yes, we can, and we should. We have a responsibility to do it. People are depending on us that we don't even know are depending on us. Morning, J-Ren. People are absolutely depending on us to be that person that shows up and has that fitly spoken word for that moment that they need it. What you think, what you say, what you do matters. And you can say things that are worthwhile when you look for that silver lining and you train yourself to see it. When you train yourself as an instinct to look for that, because you know it's a survival technique. It doesn't always feel like that when we have cushy day-to-day lives, but as soon as we have struggles, you bet we're looking for it. Practice it all the time. Practice it all the time, and you're going to do it a lot more easily. And it's not just for you. Get out of your own head, right? Realize there's other people that need you to do it. You have a responsibility to be joyful. And the opportunities are all around you. She was jelly. I love how things can come full circle here. Not even in just what I'm talking about, but in the chat, right? Gosh, you guys crack me up. After getting all deep and serious and motivational, then I have to just bust out with a belly laugh because Pinder brings up jelly. Both he and I are familiar with the bowl full of jelly laughs that we can both have because we've got a little bit. We've got a little bit, you know. And speaking of good old Pinder, make sure to get a Pinder's Ugly mug right now. Is it still available, Steve? Your Pinder's Ugly mug. It's the ugliest of mugs, you know. Hide it in your attic. Read its diary. Find the dirty jokes hidden in the secret pages. Make sure you get your shekel-filled mug. Shekel's not included. And then, if you're looking for something more handsome, feel free to try a Feel the Bears handsome mug and the handsomer mug. Both available right now from redbubble.com. You know, it's funny. I went and I was thinking about getting one in the near future. I was thinking about getting a Feel the Bears mug soon. And just because I went on Redbubble and put some things in my cart, like evil old Google that sees where I search, they're dropping ads for this on a bunch of my videos now. I'm getting a ton of Redbubble ads, like literally minutes after I visited the Redbubble site and dropped something in my cart to potentially buy later. Haven't clicked the button to purchase yet because I'm thinking about it. I'm like waiting. When's the time right? Because I do want to do that and, you know, support bears all around. Minutes after that, I saw a YouTube video and there was a Redbubble ad on it. Never had a Redbubble ad before. Creepy crap, man. But, you know, that's the AI algorithm. It's right there. Oh, puppies. There's probably somebody walking down the street singing do-a-do-a diddy-dum-diddy-doo. So posh to feel the bear. Yeah, he is. So I'm going to go deal with dogs because they're being dogs, as they often are. And I don't know if Beautiful Lady Bear's still here. Did they eat breakfast yet? They usually don't until a little bit later, but I don't know that they ate breakfast yet, so maybe that we need to do that. They are alarm dogs, but they're alarm dogs for squirtles. They're alarm dogs for light reflecting off your phone and hitting the ceiling, and they'll freak out. At least that's Gita. They're alarm dogs for things that are not worth giving alarm over, and that's frustrating. But what's the silver lining? They'll save your life. Or they'll annoy an intruder so that they'll leave. There you go. That's an example, right? Oh my goodness. So funny. Big Brother is always watching, right? And I'm just right out here in the thick of it on YouTube. I mean, they're hearing every word of this, so sooner or later, something I say will probably be construed as hate speech, and somebody will blame me because I gave the description of this mug as I did, as me being responsible in some part for the Pittsburgh incident. I have no doubt, somehow, some way, somebody out there talking about a mug that's got a Jewish ugly mug on it, is going to be accused to have part and parcel with that, If they can try to, slam our free speech by saying Gab is responsible, it wouldn't shock me. And again, I highlight these things with humor because if we don't, we kind of go nutty, and I'd rather not go nutty yet. Yeah, obviously, I'm clearly, I have an upside down Star of David somewhere in here. That's a joke because if you turn the Star of David upside down, it looks the same. In case those of you who hadn't processed that. See, I just did the Norm Macdonald thing there by explaining the joke, but that was for my own amusement. So you can either have fun with that or not. It's up to you. I love you, Bears, and I want to encourage you to have a wonderful day. I know I'm going to. I'm going to choose to. And you know what? As you're out there seeking to have your wonderful day, engage your mind, engage your body, and engage your heart and seek to serve the ultimate purpose. I love you, bears. Have a fantastic day. Blessings, guys. Peace.